Yashodanandana Rajajangarandana Jamunatira Arvangachari Jamunatira
Go Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Garadha Shri Rasadi Gaur Bhaktivedanta ki Grantaraj Śrīmad Bhāgavatam ki Gaur Pundanandi all glories to the Single all glories to the Single all glories to the Single all glories to Sri Sri Guru Sri Gauranga glories to Sri Prabhupada. lost a lens. I just lost a lens out of one of my glasses. I'm going to have to go like that. If anyone sees a lens around, could they please give it back? Huh? Okay, Śrīmad Bhāgavatam. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Dehanya deha vivade jatirangi nashrig. Vinmutra kupa patito brishatapta deha. Ichan ito vishasitum ganayan svamasan. Nivasyate kripanadhir bhagavan kadanu. Dehanya deha vivare jataragni ashrig. Vinmutraku papatito brishatapta deha. Ichan ito vishasitum ganayam swamarsan. Nirasyate kripanadhir bhagavan kadanu. Dehanya deha vivare jataragni ashrig. Vinmutraku papatito vrishaktapta deha. Ichan ito vishasitum ganayam swamarsan. Nirasyate kripanadhir bhagavan kadanu. Vinmutra kupa patito vrishatapta deha. Ichan ito vishasitum ganayam svamasan. Nirvasyate kripanadhir bhagavan katanu. Ladies. Nadir Bhagavan Kadanu Dehi. The embodied soul. Anya Deha. Of another body. Vivare. In the abdomen. Jatara. Of the stomach. Agnina. By the fire. Ashrik. Of blood. Vit. Of stool. Mutra. And urine. Kupa. In a pool. Patita. Fallen. Vrisha. Strongly. Tapta. Scorched. Deha. His body. Ichan. Desiring. Itaha. From that place. Vivashitum. To get out. Ganayan. Counting. Svamasan. His months. Nirashyate. Will be released. Kripana Dihi. Person of miserly intelligence. Bhagavan. O Lord. Kada. When. Nu. Indeed. Translation by Śrīmad Prabhupada. Fallen into the pool of blood, stool and urine, within the abdomen of his mother, his own body scorched by the mother's gastric fire. The embodied soul, anxious to get out, counts his months and prays, O my Lord, when shall I, a wretched soul, be released from this confinement? Please repeat. Fallen into a pool of blood, stool and urine, within the abdomen of his mother, his own body scorched by the mother's gastric fire. The embodied soul, anxious to get out, counts his months and prays. O my Lord, when shall I, a wretched soul, be released from this confinement? Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The precarious condition of the living entity within the womb of his mother is described here. On one side of where the child is floating is the heat of gastric fire, and on the other side is urine, stool and blood and discharges. After 7 months, the child, who has regained his consciousness, feels the horrible condition of his existence and he prays to the Lord. Counting the months until his release, he becomes greatly anxious to get out of this confinement. So-called civilized man does not take account of this horrible condition of life, and sometimes for the purpose of sense gratification, he tries to kill the child by methods of contraception and abortion. Unserious about the horrible condition within the womb, such persons continue in materialism, grossly misusing the chance of the human form of life. So the word kripanadi is significant in this verse, and di means intelligence and kripan means miserly. Conditioned life is for persons who are of miserly intelligence or who do not properly utilize their intelligence. In the human form of life, the intelligence is developed, and one has to utilize that developed intelligence to get out of the cycle of birth and death. One who does not do so is a miser, just like a person who has immense wealth but does not utilize it, simply keeping it to see. A person who does not actually utilize his human intelligence to get out of the clutches of Maya, the cycle of birth and death, is accepted as miserly. The exact opposite of miserly is udara, or very magnanimous. A brahmana is called udara because he utilizes his human intelligence for spiritual realization. He uses that intelligence to preach Krishna consciousness for the benefit of the public, and therefore he is magnanimous. Translation: fallen into a pool of blood, stool and urine within the abdomen of his mother. His own body scorched by the mother's gastric fire. The embodied soul, anxious to get out, counts his months and prays, O my Lord, when shall I, a wretched soul, be released from this confinement? So, Lord Kapila Dev is describing in these chapters, describing the devolution of the soul and also the evolution of the soul. going down and coming up again. So this is going on, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu describes. The living entity is wandering through countless births and deaths in the material world until that soul gets the association of the devotee, whereby by such mercy the living entity can become released. Now, in this particular history, we hear how the soul is coming up to the human form and taking birth in the womb of his mother. And suffering so much. The gastric fires of the mother on one side, the stool and urine, pus and blood on the other side. The suffering must be horrific. Now, we don't remember that, but surely we've all gone through it, and it's quite interesting, actually. But we've all been put into very difficult, troubling situations, but we can't imagine how troubling this is. You know, and Prabhupada describes it as being like packed up in a bag. If someone got you now and put you into a sack, tied you up, you couldn't move, and then tied the sack up, and you'd have to stay there for 9-10 months. So that would be unbearable. But somehow or other, the conditioned soul is able to bear such things. Actually, he can't bear those things until about 7 months. It's described here, the 7 months, then time comes, consciousness awakens, he awakens. And in places, Prabhupada describes this term in the womb of unconsciousness, simply it's a death. It's a death, it's a deep kind of sleep. But then, after 7 months, the child awakens within the womb and surrounded by hellish condition, absolutely hellish condition. So hellish that if that particular living entity is fortunate, he begins to pray to the Supreme Lord. As we see in our experience here, under certain conditions, everyone prays to the Supreme Lord, even if they've gone through a life of complete forgetfulness. When the troubles come, they all pray to God, "Oh, please help me." If it's not from their own troubles, perhaps from their troubles from their siblings or wife or husband. Husband is dying, the wife is praying, "Oh God, please save him. Please make him better. Please help him." Gone through the whole life basically without any God consciousness. Now all of a sudden there's a renewal, a resurgence of God consciousness, but it doesn't last for very long. But that's because it's natural, because the soul is by nature part and parcel of God. It can be covered over from time to time, deeply covered over. But there are times when the consciousness becomes a little awakened, remembers. Now here, this is interesting in this particular verse because this particular living entity which Lord Kapila is describing, he's gone, due to sinful activity, described in previous chapter, he's gone to the hellish planets. Actually it's described. Describes all the different kind of hellish reactions that one may receive due to one's own karma. Giving trouble to others, then in certain ways, very hellish sometimes, we can give trouble to others because of our attachment to our own position, our own self. We cause trouble to others to enjoy, and to become very severe for others. Anyway, there's karmic reaction for all that, and sometimes the living entity cannot bear such karmic reaction for what they do, so they have to experience it through some subtle means, and that's through the hellish planets. They go to the hellish planets and they suffer for many, 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 it appears like eternity, but it's not. It's not eternity. They pass through, and then they come to, Prabhupada describes, they learn how to suffer in the hellish planets. They learn how to suffer. So, and then according to karma, we may take birth according to our previous activities in an animal species that we've been conditioned to enjoy. It's like, say for example, you're in a nightmare and you're forced to eat your own flesh. You know, you're forced to eat your own stool and urine. there are living entities that actually have become so conditioned that they do that without any trouble. And how do they do that? Because they've become conditioned by these kinds of punishments, these nightmares that they go through. Right? So then they come up, according to their karma, they may take birth as a hog, and then they can happily eat stool and urine. Or a tiger, and you happily eat the flesh of others. Right? For us, we imagine in our condition now, vegetarian devotees, if someone forces you to eat the flesh of something that's disgusting, we can't imagine it, actually, what kind of suffering that is. But still, by conditioning, we can do anything. We can stoop to any condition by conditioning. And here it's described that even though the living entity becomes awakened, and by his suffering in the womb, he becomes momentarily God conscious, praying for release. And not only that, he seems to be able to remember why he's there. It's probably described as a repentant soul. When one becomes a repentant soul due to the suffering, then they can make some kind of conscious decision to rectify themselves. That's the whole idea of the jail system. That you're put into jail because you've done something wrong, but the idea should be that you become repentant and start to rectify yourself. And when one's seen as one is properly rectified, then they can again go out and live in the free world without causing trouble to others. Right? So one has to experience or come to the point of repentance and take responsibility for one's own misdeeds. No one else's fault. We may blame others for what, I was forced to do that because of this, because of that. But no, actually. And the time comes when our karma is looking us in the face, or we're experiencing it directly, we'll realise, especially devotees, if we ever get to that situation, could be, who knows. But the devotee by nature will become repentant. And due to that repentance, the Lord sometimes gives his mercy. Actually, in this case, the Lord gives his mercy to the conditioned soul by allowing him to remember why he's there. In the Gita, we describe Krishna gives knowledge, remembrance, and forgetfulness. So when the time comes, Krishna knows, as a super soul, knows when to give this remembrance for the benefit of the conditioned soul. But still, conditioning is so strong because we see that he becomes so repentant and so full of self-remorse and prays to the Lord that, yes, I'm such a fallen, wretched soul. I've become wretched. Please help me in this condition. And then all of a sudden, within the womb, the winds start to come. And something starts going on. Right? So he gets out by Krishna's mercy. Okay, Krishna lets him out. So by nature's arrangement, he goes through and takes birth. But immediately, even though he was somewhat God-conscious within the womb, what happens? Describe, we'll read about it. What happens? He becomes conditioned again, just like that. It's described that the force of childbirth is so traumatic, not only for the mother, but for the child. Of course, we hear stories, I've no experience in this life, can't remember, but birth for the mother is so traumatic, it's nothing can compare to it. So painful, nothing can compare to it. And what to speak of the poor child coming out, that must be even much worse. And it's described here. It's so forceful, so much suffering, that the living entity forgets what just took place within the womb. Becomes momentarily unconscious of all that. And then what happens? He or she is surrounded by all kinds of diversions. The father is waiting there, smiling face. The mother is, oh, beautiful baby, takes to the heart. Immediately takes to the breast. Hunger is there. And then the child is, even though there's still suffering going on, Prabhupada describes it, the child is crying. The parents really don't know why, but just come out of a completely confined space, and now it's it's whatever condition it's in, but it's not a natural space for a soul. It's described that the soul is a particular substance, and when the soul is in contact with matter, it's an incompatible situation. Very incompatible. No matter if it's a heavenly condition or a hellish condition, it's incompatible. So there's all types of incompatible situations that a living entity is experiencing. This is one of them. We've all gone through it. But we see how strong this material nature is and how easily we can forget our Krishna consciousness. And this is a lesson for devotees. We can easily forget our Krishna consciousness and become enamored by our surroundings. And the practice of devotional service is to help us through that. We have regulative principles which we follow, like even chanting prescribed number of rounds, 16 rounds every day. That's one part of the direction, but the other part is do them attentively. And the devotees have made an arrangement for us to be able to do them attentively by giving us each other's association and doing it in an area by which it's very difficult to become diverted from what we're doing. Because the circumstances make it easy for us to forget our Krishna consciousness. The material world makes it easy for us to forget our Krishna consciousness. That's why association of devotees is so important. And we live our lives as devotees experiencing this. Remembrance and forgetfulness. By Krishna's mercy we remember him, by Krishna's mercy we forget him. It's all Krishna's mercy. But we should learn by experience. We shouldn't be so foolish that it takes so long to learn. And it's easy to come every morning to associate with devotees, to make that time of the day where you're not deviated by whatever the material world surrounding us is offering. That is our practice, to become meditative, to become mindful of Krishna. And not just when there's suffering. You know? In the Gita, it's described 4 types of pious persons. This living entity must be pious. At previous verses it said that his fortunate living entity comes to remember his past grievous activities and comes to remember the Supreme Lord and prays to him severely with a repentant heart to please help me. So this one type of person the Gita is described takes shelter of God. What is that? Who is that? There's 4 types, isn't it? So 4 types of persons take shelter of me. Pious persons take shelter of me. So what's the first type?
Distress.
Yeah, well, I don't know if it's the first type, but it is one type, yeah. And this is this type. In distressed condition, one takes shelter. Right. And this is one we're interested in today. But Prabhupada goes on in the purport to describe that those persons are not pure devotees. Right? Pure devotional service is something different. Pure devotional service is what we're aspiring for. And that is to engage, to reawaken our intrinsic, original, eternal relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which is free from all kinds of selfish motives. Right? And in that state, we will experience actual love of God. So that's our goal. But if it's motivated, if our service or desire to serve Krishna is motivated, it's not considered pure. Right? Not considered pure. In other words, there should be no expectation of reward, and there should be no contamination of mental speculation. Then our devotion to Krishna, fructifies in a transcendental way. If our devotion is tinged with materialistic desires, then it won't fructify, our activities in devotion won't fructify in a transcendental way. We may get the results Krishna will give us. We may or may not, but still, everything's coming from the Supreme Lord. So we may get what we want after many, many years. Krishna may give, but it's not going to give us love of God. So the association of devotees and the process by which the pure devotees have given us within the material world to attain actual pure love of God is this practice of bhakti, practice of sadhana. And that's all we have. It's coming from the mercy of Prabhupada. That's all we have to allow us to transcend our suffering condition. That's all we have. So we have to really take advantage of that. It's so rare. Like, we may have been pious, we may have prayed many, many lives, for salvation or for whatever. But what happens? Immediately we forget. Material nature forces us to forget. It comes out of the womb, immediately forget. So what is it that actually, what's the difference? What helps us not to forget? The mercy of the pure devotee. Because in the material world, everything is a version from Krishna consciousness, everything. But sometimes, somewhere or other, Krishna allows devotional service to be alive and well, and it's carried by the pure devotees. So by the association of the pure devotees, we are protected from this diversion. It's only because Prabhupada gave us this program that we're able to be somewhat not attracted to the material world, somewhat protected from the alluring nature of the material world. We can go, like all of us here, we can become absorbed in Krishna consciousness, very nice, all happy, ecstasy, chanting, dancing. We walk out and go to work, forget the whole thing. We go out, and we just start looking at the shops, we start shopping here, forget the whole thing. Until we come back again, back in ecstasy again. So it's like, our lives are like that, and gradually we make more and more progress, only by the mercy of Krishna, through the mercy of the pure devotees. Well, very, very rare. So rare. It's actually an inconceivable thing. You can't imagine how rare the association of pure devotee is. That can give us that secret to go back home back to Godhead. To give us the secret, because there's nothing else will allow us to. Our religious endeavours may take us to the heavenly planets. To the heart. They may even take us to perhaps liberation. But even liberation is a selfish thing. And because we haven't purified ourselves of selfishness, because nothing has really kind of attracted us more than our own self. Krishna is Madan Mohan. He attracts, he's able to attract purely. But we can even go up to liberation. If there's no Krishna, then we're still thinking of ourselves, I am one. I am buzzing in the Brahmajyoti. I am in ecstasy. It's all still I. Right? So then what do? We might get a little kind of, then we start thinking, I am self-realized. Oh yes. I better, what about everyone else? There's a little bit of compassion. They should also know that they're God in this buzzing energy. And then they come down and start preaching. They get attracted to material energy again. Come back to the material world. So many go, Prabhupada describes the Brahmajyoti realization. It's just a beginning aspect of seeing a tiny spark of the glory of the actual God. But when we see that spark, we think, that is me. Because we haven't purified ourselves of selfishness. Not pure. So then we start to think in terms of, still selfishness. I'll come back down and I'll do some teaching, preaching, sadhu, like that. Still self-motivated. I'm sadhu. I'm self-realized. Follow me like that. The living entity can't escape this prison of selfish desire unless they have the association of the pure devotee. Now, the association of the pure devotee is so powerful that it's able to transform our selfish desire into desire to become a pure devotee ourselves. Because we see, here's the example. There's so many examples of motivated religionists in our world, and they don't really attract us. But here's the example of the pure devotee walking through the material world, which is full of diversions and attachments, but able to remain fixed in loving Krishna and serving Krishna without deviation. That's what attracts us. We can all be like that. It will take time, but the only way we can be like that is by keeping in the close association of others who are like that. There's so many examples. Prabhupada led the way. There are many devotees, on a high level of pure devotional service that are able to walk in the material world, not be affected by it because they're 100% fixed in their business here in the service of the Lord. That's what's attracting us to help to purify ourselves as well. So this poor living entity, he's was a bit Krishna conscious there for a while, and then all of a sudden he's burst out into the material. There's no one there to help him, and the suffering is pretty great. He falls again into forgetfulness because there's no association. His association is his Guru Gaga mother, and his father. Now you're my progeny, you'll become like me. And they teach him all kinds of selfish, how to become materialistic. So association is the most important thing, and it's so powerful. What's that verse? Sadhusanga, sadhusanga, sastra hoy. Lava matra, sadhusanga, sava siddha hoy. Yeah, just by a moment's association with the real devotee, pure devotee, who is walking through the world. One moment's association is enough to set one on the path back home, back to Godhead, because that devotee doesn't give materialistic things. When you go to touch the feet of the pure devotee, or what Prabhupada said is one in the train. Prabhupada was in the train, and these people came in the train and said, "Oh, sadhu, sadhu, please give me your blessings. Please give me your blessings." So the nature is that the expectation is that yes, you have a good life, whatever it is. Prabhupada says, "I'll give you a blessing. Shaved head. That is my blessing." Yes, okay, shaved head. Shave your head. That is my blessing. Follow the instructions of the pure devotee. Give up selfish sense gratification, and then you'll get the blessings of Krishna. So even one moment's association with such a soul has created such a huge movement now in the world, whereby others are following in the footsteps, pure devotee, becoming also, and it's spreading like that. So now there is a wonderful opportunity described here that it's a wonderful opportunity for our intelligence to become purified, because there's so much association now in this particular time, so much association of pure devotional service for us to be benefited. We have to become, I can't read this anymore, hold on. We have to become, our intelligence has to be, formally it's kripana, miserly, right? Because it's always thinking of how to do this for myself, for my family, extended nation, whatever. But the intelligence has to become, what's the word here? Udara, very magnanimous. Now, Prabhupada gives an example like a miser. A miser may have so much wealth, but if they're a miser, all they like to do is simply look at it. What says here? They don't even want to spend it. They want to look at it. It's like, I think, way back in the time, there was one character, his name was, what was his name? Scrooge McDuck. Anyone remember Scrooge McDuck? You remember? Yeah, of course. So he was accumulating so much wealth, he just liked wealth, and he used to have a big room full of it, and he'd just go and dive in it and swim in it. But he wouldn't give anything away to anyone, especially his family. Even his family wouldn't give away. Anyway, he was known. He was the personification of miserly. Right? So he has so much, he has everything, but he just likes to look at it. So in the human form of life, we have so much. Krishna has given us so much. He's given us human intelligence, which allows us to inquire into the nature of God and be able to reawaken Krishna's given that. He's given us this intelligence. Human intelligence is a rare jewel. But what do we want to do? We just want to look at it. Think it's, for us, it's me. This intelligence is me. We won't utilize it. What's speak of intelligence? Whatever we get, it's like that. We just like to, accumulate more and more and more, and we won't use it. But one who does not utilize their intelligence is a miser, just like a person has immense wealth, but does not utilize it. He's simply keeping it to look at, to see. So a person who does not actually utilize his human intelligence to get out of the clutches of Maya, the cycle of birth and death, is certainly miserly. And the exact opposite of this miser is Udara, very magnanimous. So a Brahmana, spiritualist, is called Udara because he utilizes his human intelligence for spiritual realization. He uses that intelligence to preach Krishna consciousness for the benefit of the public, and therefore he is magnanimous. So that's the real meaning of magnanimity. So, is there Any questions or comments? Yes.
Can I have microphone? Then I can.
You can have microphone. We can hear. Can we hear? Yeah, you can hear.
Okay. You are telling Bhagavatam is giving a very graphic picture of how the labor takes place. But there are a lot of delayed labor problems. Sometimes head presentation is not there. Breech presentation. The buttocks present. The cervix is dilated completely. Baby cannot come out because of the buttock is so big. So we have to do cesarean section. There may be cord prolapse. The connection between the baby and the mother. The cord prolapses in that part, so the baby can't come out.
Yeah, that's a suffering.
There are so many complications.
Yeah.
So that's why Prabhupada is giving us such a great picture that we have to be Krishna conscious to get out of this material world. I'll tell you my story, personal. I've told many times. When I was 5-year-old, my mother used to tell me, if you don't become a devotee, then you have to go to another womb, which can be a human womb or an animal womb, and you have to suffer so much. So you have to become, and she used to say, Punnapi janini yashreshenam trai marare. There's so much trouble, so much problem. That's why I'm taking shade of Srila Prabhupada, who has given a very graphic picture. If you don't become Krishna conscious, there is no way you can get out. And the most important is Shraddha. Our Shraddha is most important than sadhana.
So you had good fortune of a sadhu sangha. Your mother was sadhu. She told you from the very beginning. So that's very good.
So many books,
Yeah,
as you said.
exactly.
Prabhupada gave such a good program to get out of this material world. And the distribution of books is most important. I'll tell you how I got a book.
We maybe have. Hold on. There's forums for this kind of sangha. So hold on.
It's not a simple thing. It's a complicated labor. It's a very big subject, huge subject now.
Okay.
It's not my field, but I know a little bit. That's what I'm able to tell you.
Very good.
That we have to be, everybody has to be Krishna conscious, and we have to spread this message to everyone.
Hare Krishna.
Whomsoever becomes, that's why Mahaprabhu says, Yare Teke Tare Kaha Krishna.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Joshua.
Do even the atheists pray in the room?
An atheist can pray in the room. They can. But, in the Gita it's described how there are 4 kinds of pious people, 4 kinds of impious people. Those that are impious generally don't take shelter. But Prabhupada also mentions even the atheists can take shelter. Right? Even the impious can take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And there are many examples also of, this atheism, theism, we're always seesawing between the two anyway, according to our association. Usually people become an atheist because of their association. They hear a kind of a philosophy and they're attracted to it. It sounds good. And no God, that sounds good for me. They're attracted to that because that's their desire to forget God. So the atheist, Krishna gives that philosophy so you can live in a kind of an illusion that there is no God. But then that can be changed by the association of a pure devotee. We can, So.
In the room with the child, would the fetus actually be considered an atheist?
No, it's described, this particular history, this particular child in the womb, it's not necessary that every living entity in the womb prays like this, because previous verses describe, if the living entity is fortunate, he's able to remember in that condition, in that suffering condition, it forces him to remember why I'm here. So he remembers that, and then he obviously is pious, so he starts to pray to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It's not everyone that does that. But in due course of time, everyone will do it. It just depends on your circumstances. In due course of time, everyone will go through this, they've fallen from their spiritual position. In due course of time, everyone will again go back home, back to Godhead. But it appears that we've been conditioned for so long in the material world, it's like Nityabhata, it's eternal for us. That every living entity is purely spirit soul. And it just requires a certain tweaking, a certain condition where they can revive their Krishna consciousness again. So an atheist is not an eternal position. So you can't really say, well, an atheist, can an atheist remember Krishna? They can.
Karmanya Devi.
Hold on, you've had your turn. You'll have to Pratapa.
Is there such a thing as somebody who is so evil, like Stalin or
Yeah.
Hitler, these kind of characters that are just pure evil? Is there such a thing as eternally damned, that they never go back to the spiritual world because they've been so sinful that they're eternally going to stay in the material world and suffer? Or do such personalities eventually,
Yeah.
after trillions of light years of creation, do they also go back?
Yeah, they can also go back. There's no eternal damnation.
So Hitler could be back in the spiritual world.
The nature of the hellish experience, like that's described in the Bhagavatam, the different hellish planets, that the nature of those hellish planets are such that a living entity can purge themselves of what they've done by having to experience those hellish planets. And, someone like Stalin or Hitler or something, they've probably not enough time in a span of life to be able to suffer for that, but they can condense all that in this subtle condition of the hellish planets, where you're suffering, they're throwing you off the cliff, they're ripping your arms off, and it's going on for eternity. It seems like that, but it's not eternity. It's just it's an illusion, another illusion, but the suffering is so great and long-lasting, it appears like it's eternal. So, and another point is, you may think that people that are pure evil, we should be careful because somehow they got themselves into those circumstances. Any one of us can fall down to that level, that platform. Any one of us can fall down to take birth in a tree, body of a tree, body of stone, animal of some kind, And then in the human form of life, we can stoop to anything if our lust is too great. If we allow it, the lust is the gateway to hell. So if we allow it to burn, we stoke the fire of our lust, and people do that. They think, the modern day is stoke the fire of your lust, and you'll be free of it. You'll be satisfied. Intelligence becomes so bewildered, they lose all concept of what they're doing. And people like Stalin and Hitler, they lose concept of what they're doing. They think it's right to kill, to kill people because they're a certain birth, nature or nationality. But they think they're doing right. Like Hiranyakashipu thought he was doing right, didn't he? Yeah. Well, and Hiranyakashipu, they were gatekeepers of Vaikuntha. So if they can fall down to a certain type of mentality, what to speak of us? It's pretty scary.
If I can just offer a comment on what the partner was saying. I heard an lecture some time ago, Prabhupada was talking about people who abort the child of women. They're so simple, they never see the light of day. They're put in this situation repeatedly, and they never see the light of day. There's birth after birth after birth.
Within the womb, right? They themselves...
They stay in the womb.
Yeah.
They just never see the light of day. They get aborted, they get back in the womb, they get aborted. So they never see the light of day.
Yes, sorry, you had your hand up.
Prabhu, thank you for the wonderful class. My question is that, as you mentioned, that only pious living entities or fortunate living entities are able to make such prayers to the Lord. So my question is that how their prayers are answered? Does it mean that when they come out, they'll be fortunate enough to get an association of the devotee of the Lord, or how does the Lord?
What was the question?
The question is like the pious living entity.
Yeah.
Who is in the womb of the mother, he's praying to the Lord.
Yeah.
In such a situation.
Yeah.
When he comes out, he's overtaken by Maya and all that, and he forgets everything.
Yeah.
So, but he has already prayed to the Lord. So how does her prayers
Well, he's praying to the Lord. If you see that the Lord, he had remembrance of the Lord, but what was he praying for? His condition was so great that he's simply praying to get out. This verse says that. Please, I'm in such a wretched soul, and I'm stuck in this condition. Please let me get out. I need to get out. So he was thinking of himself. He's not thinking of, and let me engage in your devotional service. Just let me get out of here. So Krishna, okay, out you go. So birth takes place and out he goes. Out he pops. Unfortunately, he didn't take birth in the family of devotee. Because then he would have had good association and carried on. Actually, one thing I've been noticing in the temple here is very, very wonderful. Speaking of kids, they're so fortunate to take birth in such nice devotional families. And you can see the enthusiasm of the children in the temple here. It's very pure. It feels pure and it feels ecstatic, you know. And the kids seem naturally inclined towards that lifestyle, which shows that they're very pious souls, you know. It's a difference between, well, I don't know what goes on at home, but even in the temple, say there are many temples, the kids come and they're kind of, you know, forced to come in and, you know, forced to stay and, you know, do this, do that, and they're just kind of doing the motions. But here the kids seem very spontaneously attracted to, probably due to the caring of their parents. They take birth in good families and the care that the parents have given them to train them up. And now they have some spontaneous happiness in being in the atmosphere and doing the services and chanting Hare Krishna and like that. So it's very, very good. These children are very fortunate. So, you know, they may have been in the womb at the same time and praying, please let me out, but they may have also been praying, please let me remember you. That's the difference. You know, please let me engage in your service. You know, they're born into a position where they can do like that. Okay, we have to finish. Thank you very much. All God, Srila Prabhupada.